Hello, welcome to another edition of Best Fridays in Football with Urban Meyer and some guy named Martin and some guy named Martin. Urban, it was terrific to see you in Gainesville this week. You look very comfortable there.
Yeah, it was great to be back, and I'm always comfortable when I'm around a guy like Brenden Spikes. I thought that, first of all, the quarterback club is a great group of people. You know, that was the one that I would never miss when I was a coach at Florida, and I love those people. They're blue-collar. They're great fans. They give back to the university. Very loyal. And then to have a guy like Brenden Spikes, man, that was
I know Brenden has some questions about that later. Let him ask them. Let's focus on what's ahead of us now. How much longer can this phenomenal story go on about Coach Prime?
We're here again. I'm in Denver, and we go to Boulder. You know, I think I heard LeBron and Snoop and Will Ferrell, and this is going to be the cast of All-Stars for the game. You know, I'm worried that, you know, I have more insight than most because I went and watched him practice.
Mm-hmm.
I sat in the meetings. I've known Coach Prime a long time, got a lot of respect for him. It's very different as an approach, very unique, but it's also Deion Sanders, arguably one of the greatest players and a very disciplined guy. That's the thing that I don't think most people understand. However, the reality is that, you know, I said after watching him play, he took over a historically bad, one of the worst football teams. They were 1-11 year ago, and the scoring differential was 500 and some to 100 and some. It was terrible. And he came in and got rid of a lot of guys, brought in his own, brought in a great staff, and they're going to win, you know, half their games. But reality set in last week in Eugene, Oregon, and I think reality is going to set in when they play a very talented USC.
Now it's when he has to really coach, as you said the other night. People don't realize what it's like in the life of a coach when he loses a football game. I quoted you that last night on the show. It changes your life, and I know you more than most people because you took every loss really, really hard. And, you know, it's enough to drive some people out of the business, and I don't know what it's like, but it must be horrible to lose a game that you hope to win.
Yeah, I'm going to talk about this on Big Noon is that, you know, I think most college football coaches' careers are defined not by wins but by losses and how you handle them. You know, there's guys that I was one that I'm, you know, almost 6 years old and I'm not going to coach again. It's not because of the wins. It's because the losses just beat you. You know, I really couldn't handle a loss. And I tried. I tried everything. You know, it wasn't easy for me to blame others. I took it all on the chin myself. And, you know, I just would constantly overanalyze what happened. If it was something, which it's always something, you could have done better. That just beat you to death. And so I think Deion Sanders' career is going to be defined not by wins because he's going to have some really good wins. He's not lost now. You look at his lifetime, you know, he's one of the greatest athletes ever to walk the planet. He's actually from Florida, and he played at Florida State, obviously great career there. He won a couple of Super Bowls. He won the World Series. You know, there are some seasons he had some losing records, but he not used to that 35-0 in the first half. And reality is that it's going to take a minute to build that program.
Well, you can coach him through that. You had some tough issues at Bowling Green and things you had to deal with, and I know it must be difficult. I think we all kind of missed on Deion. I don't think I did. I thought when I heard him talk, I felt like he was something special because one thing you taught me, if you can communicate with your players, you're all good. And he really communicates with them in special ways, not the book, because he didn't coach through Bill Belichick or Urban Meyer or whatever. He learned it through trial and error. And just watching him pull a kid aside like he did, who dropped the pass 2 weeks ago and saying, right now, your father is in prison watching you play here. You know, don't do this. Do it for him right here. And he has a way of getting to kids, Urban, I've not seen before.
Yeah, he's very unique. And I made a comment to Bruce Feldman, the guy who works for us at Box. You know, I said this was going to be the new target for every athletic director as an opening. And they're going to try to find a guy like Deion Sanders, a guy that's going to come in and completely overhaul the roster. A guy that can do the things he's doing. And then Bruce looked at him and he says, yeah, that might be the blueprint, but there's only one Deion Sanders.
That's exactly right. I agree.
Yeah, very few that can do what he's doing.
Yeah, I agree. That's it. Well, speaking of which, I know Brenden wants to get a couple questions in here, but you keep getting asked this question over and over and over. I've already challenged you to say what I would do if you ever took the coaching job, even an old man here. But you got asked a question in front of the Gainesville Quarterback Club. Would you consider coaching again? And Shelly broke up. No.
No, I found out there's a really nice life out here. We're traveling, Shelly and I, in the off season do. So I never took a vacation. If I did, it was certainly not engaged. It was a couple days here, a couple days there, but I was working all the time. So, I think she's earned it. My kids have earned it. And I love staying engaged with what I'm doing. I love doing this with you. I have a friend up at Columbus named Tim May. It's funny, I get asked to do a million different podcasts and all that. And I'm at the point of my life, I get to pick who I do it with. That's what I do with you, because you're a loyal friend and you're great at what you do. And I have another friend like that up at Columbus named Tim May.
I know Tim.
Something together because, I get asked to do a lot, but I'm going to pick and choose. So I'm really enjoying what I'm doing.
Well, we're flattered that you spend a few minutes with us, and we don't want to keep you too long. Let's let Brenden get in there. He's dying to ask a couple of questions. I have a couple of follow-ups about football, the landscape of football, the celebration of the game of football. One thing I love about Coach Prime, he's kind of made it passé to talk about NIL deals and all the other stuff, the garbage that we've had. All of a sudden, it's fun again, isn't it?
It is. I'm still concerned about the direction of what's happening. And, I saw Gene Smith and a couple of people went and talked to the politicians about this, which I'm not a big fan of that. If you look where we're at in certain situations, politicians, you put it in their hands. That's not what I would do, but once again, no one's asking me. So I'm a little worried, but like you said, Dion, when they start talking about cars and all the, stuff that goes on now, which once again, am I a big fan of? No, but it is fun to watch. We've covered it, man. We're here again. So it's really fun to watch.
That's congratulations to Fox for having enough sense to recognize a story that has basically captured the imagination of everybody, not just football fans. There's a whole bunch of other people, celebrities and women, who are watching college football, a new crowd. Right, Brenden?
Yeah, no question. And, I as much as Buddy's been a Coach Prime guy, I think I had my sort of doubts, not that, he could do it, but much of what you were saying, Coach, about it's not, the mark of a person's character, to act amazing when things are going amazing. It's how do you act when the chips are down, right? And I think, Dion has had so much success. I too wonder about what happens to him on the back end. But switching gears, seeing you in Gainesville the other night at the Gainesville Quarterback Club was such a fun experience. I've been to a million of these with Dad. You flipped the script a little bit, and I was wondering if you could touch on how you sort of designed the talk to include Brenden Spikes, and tell us a little bit about how you all went about that, because you made such a special experience for everybody involved.
Yeah, I've kind of changed our format. I don't, to get up there and speak, and I don't. My experiences in the last couple of years, I don't really do that much anymore, unless that's what's designed to be. And especially situations like this, how about this, buddy? I've been asked to go to the Knoxville Quarterback Club.
Can I take a camera and follow you? That would be just as...
I might go do this, because he's such a good guy, the guy in charge of it. He's like,
where?
Out, they're going to send a private plane. So I might go do it, but I think when you engage the crowd, that's much better than someone standing up there talking for 15 minutes and then you sit down. And the responses have been much better. So the format, the other day at the Quarterback Club, I thought was perfect. And when you have a man like Brenden Spikes sit next to you, I have a feeling everybody in that room went home feeling good about, Brenden Spikes, about the era, Swamp Kings era, and about the current status of Florida football.
Yeah, it was a neat format to sit and watch. It was very comfortable. You and Brenden up on stage with Dooley and just doing a Q&A and talking about stories. It was a neat experience. I wanted to just ask a follow-up question about Brenden Spikes. When he was asked about coaching and the team, seemed to have a different, answer as to, when asked directly about a game or Tennessee or coming up in Kentucky. And he said, I don't really engage in a whole lot of that. I'm really worried about, and I'm paraphrasing, raising basically good young men, that these guys are getting a good experience. And he was more about the character development of the player, less worried about the X's and O's. And I wondered, do you think, I feel like personally, and I want to know if you thought, does he have a career in coaching? Because he seems to really take to it. A lot of people look to him, even Napier looked to him and said he's a big reason for the Tennessee win.
Yeah, I think he's a magnetic personality. He really struggled with that at first. His first, and it's really well documented in that show, The Swamp Kings, where he liked to play football, and that was it. Wasn't a big fan of leading, wasn't a big fan of the weight room and training, wasn't a great student. And then, Charlie Strong, obviously, who I love to death, was his position coach, did a great job. And I met so many times with Brenden to the point where he's like, finally, he got it. Once he flipped the switch, our team flipped the switch. Very few people are magnetic like that. And so I hear from people, and I know he will not make a good coach. He'd be a great coach. He would be a guy that, people follow him. And that's happening in Florida right now. He's a guy that, you talk about Deion Sanders. Now, Brandon's not that, but in his own world, for the Gator Nation, he's Deion Sanders. He has that kind of impact on people.
I love what he said about the linebackers. He said this, I think, after or before his Gainesville appearance. And he said the other day, he's got two really good ones. And the players are talking about these guys as being people that are going to be leaders. Scooby Williams is playing terrific. He's getting a lot of run from people, and the other kid who's playing that inside linebacker position, they're both really leaders on that team. He told them, Shamar James, you have to be vocal. You have to be vocal. You have an obligation to be vocal to lead. And I think that's what he learned when he was coaching with you. You probably, Charlie, somebody told him, you got to lead. And he said something like, look, you're the quarterback. You're the quarterback of the defense. Whatever Tim Tebow is to the offense, you're the quarterback, not the defense. I think is going to mold those two young men into fine players. I think they're already playing really good.
Yes, one thing when a coach says it, but when a player, a former colleague, a former guy that everybody saw, and I think it was perfect timing for the Swamp Kings, because Brenden even called me that he said during training camp when that thing came out, they all watched it. They all asked him questions. They saw the training, the practices, how hard they were. And greatness is, that's a thing that I would get very emotional and very upset about when I would hear people talk of greatness but not be willing to put it to work, because that just throws shade or, in my mind, disrespects those who did the great things. And when you talk to a Brenden Spites, it's instant credibility. It's instant impact as far as following him. And I'm so glad he's there. I tried to get Ahmad Black there. There's so many, Lewis Murphy's another one that has so many gifts. And so Ahmad Black right now is coaching at Lakeland. And you talk about a perfect person to be somewhere near that Gator program.
Terrific. I know you're proud of all your players and how they're developing now as men. Let's talk for a second about what Billy Napier is facing. I know you haven't had a chance to really grade anything, film or anything else, but our conversation is this, when we talked about how this team is kind of growing up. Brenden made a great point the other night saying you don't want to peak too early, and if this team goes out and plays well, they've got the QB. Mertz is playing terrific. I think they got the running backs, they got the running game, the offensive line's coming back, the wide receivers. Urban, you're going to hear some of these young kids they got. Aiden Mizell and those guys. They are terrific players. And, of course, we know Ricky Pearsall. The defense, I love the attacking style of Austin Armstrong. They're really, really playing well. So will they put it all together against Kentucky? I think they will, because I think they're not making the mistakes they were making earlier in the year. What is your assessment right now of what you know, what little you know, what do you see forthcoming, and how much better can this team be than it is right now?
Yeah, I made a comment on Big Noon about this was a defining moment for Billy Napier. this was if he lost that Tennessee game, I hate to say it, all momentum would have been shot. I'm not on the field momentum really wasn't it. It was the momentum in recruiting, the momentum, the continuity that he keeps right now with the coaching staff. That's all gone if he would have lost that game, and he did it. The swamp looked beautiful that night. And I made a comment about the Tom Petty.
Yeah.
When they do it, the fourth quarter is beautiful. And, if I'm a recruit, I want to go to Florida. And so that momentum, and then obviously you had to win the game, and he did. Unfortunately, momentum disappears quickly if you go up to Lexington.
Mm-hmm.
I was the coach there when I think we won, I can't remember the number, in a row. And I always felt that pressure because Kentucky's they had Rich Brooks, really good coach. They had Woodson was a Heisman candidate. They had really good players. And ESPN Game Day, they were top 10 in the country one time. We went up there and played. Game Day was there. We won the game. But the pressure to win that game is immense. And Mark Stoops, the coach of Kentucky, in my mind, is one of the great coaching jobs in the last decade. He's got a really good team. I know they beat Florida 2 out of 3 or 3 out of 4, which I can't believe you can say that because it went so long where they didn't beat Florida, but they're a good team. That's a tough environment. And, this is, they better strap it on because all this great conversation we're having right now, as well as I do, next week's going to be a bad one if we don't find a way to win this.
Vanderbilt will be a do-or-die game all of a sudden. You're right about that, though. They have beaten 3 out of 4, and they won 2 in a row. And if they win Saturday, it's only the second time in the history of the series, the last time being when Bear Bryant was coaching, that they lost 3 in a row, Kentucky. So they can't have those trends reversed.
No.
You and Spurrier and those guys set that pattern now. And Gator fans are thinking, well, we ought to beat them because we're Florida. There's a little more that goes into it than that. So it's really a big game this weekend for both coaches, in my opinion.
Well, Dad, I was remembering when we were in Lexington the last time together, and that's when Tebow was knocked out on the field.
Urban remembers well.
We were talking, and I was just wondering, and you remember that? I mean, I actually remember that day, but I mean, that's the last time I saw a game in Lexington with Dad, and what a memory that was.
Yeah, that was a tough day. That was we won the game. We had Tim. We had a really good game plan. I remember we went up and down the field on a run game, and Tim got hit, and the hit didn't do it as when his head hit the knee of an offensive lineman. And I went out on the field, and I mean, he was out. He was out cold, and the end of the story is really good. Is that he was fine, and he had a concussion, pretty tough concussion. I believe he stayed overnight and in the hospital, and then flew home the next day. And then we had a 2-week window where, we had the specialist from Pittsburgh, the concussion specialist, come down, and he didn't get cleared to play until Thursday before LSU. And we went into Death Valley there and won the game, a night game, one of the few night games you can win down there. And that was after that injury. So, yeah, that was a scary moment.
It's a very scary moment. By the way, Coach, you know what happened 15 years ago today?
No.
The promise.
Promise.
15 years.
15 years ago today.
15 years.
I'm going to take you back to that for a second because there's a little more detail to it than what people can know. And in doing the book with you behind me there, Irwin's Way, we talked about this. And you revisited that scene. Losing to Ole Miss was devastating to everybody, especially Tim. And Tim went to his locker, and he couldn't stop crying. And you went to him, and you did something I rarely have heard of before. You didn't say anything. You sat down I think on the floor next to him, leaned against him. And it was a very, very tender moment. Then Tim got up and came out and said the promise. Brenden and I were there for the promise. He filmed it. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I mean, you don't know what's going on back there. What do you say? You have no idea if some guy asked him a crazy question or something. And it was an unbelievable moment inscribed right there, which you put up there on the facade of the building, the promise. It is our version of Newt Rockney's speech. That is Tim Tebow's promise.
Yeah, I hear people say it's over dramatic. I'm saying, no, it's not. It's one of the most unique things that has ever happened in college football history, certainly Florida football history. That's why I remember I had it put on the wall at the Edner Center. And it was an iconic moment. It was something that I had wished at the time Tim would not have done, because I just know how the media can be really nasty. when I shouldn't call media, just the hounds out there that just dive all over people, especially when you put yourself out there like that. And he did. And I didn't hear about it until the next day. And David Nelson, the impact of that was immediate. David Nelson was a guy that was really a recruiting mistake. He was a guy that just good player, really good person, just didn't have the work ethic or drive to be great. And I come walking in real early the next morning, and he's sitting there with tears in his eyes, David Nelson. And he said, Coach, I'm done. I need to do something, help this team. After I heard Tim's speech, I can't do this anymore. And he was very emotional. We have a rule back then that you can't play until you're on special teams. It's not like you're going to go play offense. That's not the way the world works. You have to earn your right to play that. And I said, okay, pal, you're going to work like you've never worked. It's easy to sit here and talk about it. And he started that day preparing to go be on kickoff return. He recovered an onside kick. He eventually became a starter. When Percy Harvin was hurt against Alabama, he scored the go-ahead touchdown. And then he also caught the jump pass in the national championship against Oklahoma. Now that's the result of the promise by Tim. So iconic moment, a moment that obviously I'm very biased, but the heck with it. That's one of the great moments in college football.
It is. I know Brenden was.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I mean, I was there for all of it, and it's still awesome to hear about it. I mean, it's awesome. Thanks for sharing, Coach.
Yeah. Coach, I'm going to let you get out of here, but I wanted to talk a minute about college football, which is this show is about college football and the landscape. And we talked about you got 4 conferences named, and let's see, you have the SEC ranked 4th, I believe, in your conferences, correct? Third, okay. And I don't know why, but do you think Alabama maybe has found something? They put a hurting on Ole Miss, and Lane Kiffin couldn't get it done again against Nick Saban.
Yeah, I got up this morning and I watched LSU too, because the 2 preseason teams in the top 4 were LSU and Alabama. They had early season bad losses. But we had a bad loss. We lost to Ole Miss, and every time we lost to Auburn, when we won a national title, when I was at Ohio State, we lost to Virginia Tech early in the year. So that happens. And they have 2 excellent coaches in Brian Kelly and Nick Saban, obviously. And they look like they got talent now. They look like they found a little something. Their offense line did not play well in that loss to Texas and South Florida. They played a lot better against Ole Miss. I watched LSU against Arkansas this morning, and as long as you protect Jaden Daniels, he's a Heisman candidate.
He's a good player.
But they didn't. He was getting smoked in that first half against Arkansas. I mean, I'm going to actually show it on Big Noon. So the FCC right now is the 3rd conference in the country. I don't think it'll stay that way. But reality is the Pac-12, right now the Big Ten I have is number 1 because of the Big 3, but the bottom half of the Big Ten is not good. And so I'm starting to think the Pac-12, think about this, the conference that's going to go away is the best conference in college football. Wow. They have 4 teams in the top 9, I believe, and they're really good. They have NFL quarterbacks. The Washington team, I'll tell you what now, if you guys that's one negative about Pac-12. They're so far out west, and I don't know much about them until I started watching here recently.
They're good,
really good. USC, this Caleb Williams, I'm going to do a special on him as well. Cliff Kingsbury said could be the greatest athlete or the greatest player to ever come out of college football.
Wow!
Wow! Yeah. And you watch him on video, there's not much argument.
Yeah.
I mean, he is that good. So the Pac-12 right now is the number 1 conference. College football.
Yeah, for sure. And the Big 12's coming on pretty good for what they've got. One more, Brenden, if you need to jump in real fast. I want to talk special teams, Herbert, because you became the special teams coach when you were an assistant, and you learned about special teams, and you always understood it and understood the importance of it. Some coaches don't seem to put the premium on it. Now, some people give their units a special name and whatever, but you practice it all the time. You was a gospel that you preach to the special teams people. How do you elevate the importance of special teams besides the head coach becoming the special teams coach?
I don't think you do. I think that's it. If the head coach, that's what I worry at times about play callers. I know Coach Day is one of the best play callers that have been around. I think Billy V. Beard calls plays, and that's a full-time job. But so is special teams coordinator, and so is head coach of a program. And I always felt, because I saw, years of working as an assistant, that I really believe that the head coach has to put his arm around every player. And the way to do that, to me, is special teams. If you're the quarterback coach, or if you're an offensive coordinator or defensive coordinator, that's not happening. And as a result, the majority of time, the other side of the ball is not playing well. So it looks like the Gators are playing well on defense. We'll see if that continues. They have really good players, good coach. Ohio State's playing really good on defense right now. But it's a long season. I just really believe special teams, when you start talking about that great inch by inch, remember that great, I can't remember who said it, Robert De Niro, I think, or when he gave that speech about, but it's true. In the great games, every inch matters. And there's no other phase of the game that is a 40-yard change of field position every time. That group jumps on. Kickoff, kick return, punt return. Those are huge chunks of field position that have to be executed. And I've always believed in that. And you want to go win a game, go block a punt. You're going to win that game 90% of the time. I'm not that smart. Well, if someone told me that's how you go win a game, we're going to spend a lot of time on it. Boy, did we.
Flip the field. Didn't even ask you about Lou Holtz and Ryan Day another time. Brenden, you got time for one short. Coach, got to go.
Coach, just in general this year, who's your, not favorite, but who do you see as really emerging as one of the best teams in the country with your perspective at Fox?
I think Texas is loaded. Top to bottom. You look at recruiting. At some point, that place is too good a place. There's too many good players there. I think Sark's a heck of a coach, a great play caller, but also a heck of a coach. So I just think Texas, that win, what they did, not many people, I think it's the first time ever Nick Saban has someone go into Tuscaloosa and beat them like that. So I have Texas, on my top four, and I'm screwing around with a little bit, but I have Texas, Georgia. Georgia, they're the man until you beat the man. So Florida's got a tough one coming up against them. So it's Texas, Florida. And then I got, either Florida State. I call it the game. Everybody gets mad at me on Big Noon because I say it's Ohio State or the Wolverines. Mm-hmm. And they say, you can't do that. I said, I can do whatever I want.
There you go. Yeah, I'm ready. You can do whatever you want.
But I'll tell you what, USC and Washington, you guys get a chance ever to go watch them, man. They are really, really good. I think they're both right there at the top four.
Love it. Football coming up. Good football games coming up. Irvin, thank you so much. Another terrific edition of the Best Fridays in Football with Coach Urban Meyer. Irvin, thank you so much.
Have a great day, boys.
Thanks, Coach.
Enjoy Colorado.